Tristan didn't know he was heading for the stables until he reached them. All he'd known was that he needed to get out of that room and away from Sarah, and that any delay would mean disaster. He went to the tack room and grabbed Ares' bridle, then headed for the horse's stall. Scenting his master, Ares bellowed and knocked at the stall door with his ironclad hoof. "Easy, lad," Tristan said. "You'll be out of there soon enough." Tristan slipped into the stall and bridled the stallion. He shed his jacket and vest, tossing them onto the stall floor without a second thought. Once he'd led Ares through the stable and into the castle courtyard, he swung up onto the stallion's back. Gripping Ares' mane in his fist, Tristan lightly touched his heels to the stallion's flank. For a moment, the great horse's muscles bunched up, and then he exploded forward. Though he knew it was risky, Tristan didn't bother to check Ares' stride, instead letting the stallion have his head as they plunged into the night. At least there's a bit of moonlight to guide us, Tristan thought. Galloping at this breakneck pace after dark was foolhardy for both the horse and his rider, but Tristan needed to burn away the turmoil that felt like poison in his veins. "I don't want to hurt you, Sarah. I don't want you to be afraid of me." The wind carried away Tristan's string of curses. Why in the bloody hell had he said those things to her? In truth, the problem wasn't that he'd said them. The problem was that he'd meant them. When Tristan arrived at the dining hall, he'd felt he had the situation well in hand. Sarah had fled the library earlier that day, confused and wary, exactly the way he wanted her. But the sight of her at dinner, the way the firelight played on her porcelain skin when she turned to reveal the open back of her gown, had made his entire body tighten. Their conversation had only made things worse. All signs of Sarah's discomfiture had vanished, while Tristan found himself fumbling for confidence. It wasn't simply her beauty that stole his wits. Her very presence radiated something Tristan hadn't known he'd been longing for until he was face to face with it. Companionship. Sarah was the only person he'd spoken with in 7 years who hadn't been sent to befriend him on Bosque Mar's orders. "She's not here because she likes you, you idiot," Tristan reminded himself. "She's a prisoner. She's your prisoner." But any time Sarah had raised that point over dinner, Tristan felt as if she'd plunged a blade into his belly and was slowly twisting it. That was when he realized he wanted her to be there voluntarily. He wanted Sarah to choose to be with him. What he'd described to Lana as a means of trickery, a cruel ploy intended to make Sarah divulge the information Tristan needed, had in the space of hours become something he desperately hoped for. The madness of that desire nearly undid him. So he'd fled, not knowing what else to do in that moment of panic. Tristan leaned into Ares' neck, letting the stallion take them where the horse willed. Closing his eyes, Tristan lost himself in the rhythm of Ares' hoof strikes on the moors, the scream of the wind around them. He straightened only when Ares slowed to a trot, and then a walk. The shrieking wind died, replaced by the crash of surf. Ares had run the length of the island. Now his hooves sunk into the sand of the only shoreline not made treacherous by rocks. Steam rose from the stallion's coat, his neck bowed with exhaustion. Tristan sucked in deep breaths of the salt air, letting its cool yet pungent flavor still his rioting spirit. Tristan had to suddenly grasp Ares' mane and grip the stallion's sides with his thighs when the horse tossed his head and shied. Ares gave a sharp whistle of alarm and began to prance along the shore. Familiar enough with the stallion's behavior to know the cause of Ares' fear, Tristan called out, "Change forms and get over here." From within the shadows of a copse of trees, a wolf slunk into